What if I told you that the most dangerous person you'll ever meet might be the one offering you a warm cup of milk before bed? The one with the gentle smile who remembers your birthday, asks about your health, and always seems to show up right when you need comfort the most? In an old black and white photograph from 1954, a woman sits perfectly upright in a police interrogation room. Her hair is neatly curled, she's wearing a simple floral dress, and her hands rest gently on her lap. But it's her expression that will haunt you, a soft, almost pleasant smile that looks completely out of place in a room where she's being questioned about multiple murders. Her name was Nannie Doss, and by the time this photo was taken, investigators believed she was connected to the deaths of 11 people. Husbands, children, grandchildren, her own mother, all gone under mysterious circumstances, all with Nannie playing the role of the devoted caregiver right up until the very end. The American press called her the Giggling Granny, and here's the thing that'll keep you up at night. She earned that nickname not because she was crazy or obviously dangerous, but because she genuinely seemed to find the whole situation amusing, like she was in on some joke that nobody else understood. But the real joke? For 30 years, an entire society looked at this sweet-faced woman and never once thought to ask the obvious question: why does everyone around Nannie Doss keep dying? It all started in 1905 in Blue Mountain, Alabama, one of those forgotten little towns where everyone knows everyone, and secrets are supposed to stay buried. Nannie was born into a world where women were taught three things: cook, bear children, and keep quiet. Her father ruled the house with an iron fist, controlling everything from her schooling to how often she was allowed to smile. Can you imagine growing up in a place where even your expressions were monitored? Young Nannie wasn't allowed to attend school regularly or make friends. Instead, she spent her afternoons buried in romance magazines, dreaming of the perfect love story that would sweep her away from this suffocating existence. Those glossy pages filled her head with fantasies of men who would carry her off to somewhere softer, somewhere she could finally breathe. At 16, she married Frank Harrelson, a railroad worker who seemed decent enough. But here's where the story takes its first dark turn. Just months after their wedding, Nannie discovered that her decent husband had a serious drinking problem and wasn't shy about using his fists. But this was the 1920s, remember? Nobody called it abuse back then. They just called it marriage. What chills me most about Nannie's early letters is how detached they sound. She'd write things like, "Frank drinks every night. I read the paper. We sleep in separate rooms." No emotion, no complaints, just cold clinical observations. It was as if she was documenting her life rather than living it. But was this emotional numbness a survival mechanism, or was something darker already taking root in her mind? Frank eventually died of liver failure. Completely natural, the doctors said. And why wouldn't they? Alcoholics die of liver problems all the time. Nannie stayed in their old house with her chickens and her radio, listening to late-night talk shows and slowly disappearing into herself. But here's what nobody knew: Nannie was changing. Her journals from this period reveal a woman consumed by a particular kind of loneliness, not the kind that comes from being alone, but the kind that grows when your life has lost all meaning. She wrote, "I wake up, make coffee, turn on the radio. I sit and watch the sunlight through the window. Nothing changes. No one needs me to change." Can you feel the desperation in those words? Or was this the calculated writing of someone already planning her next move? Then came the personal ads. Nannie started placing them in newspapers, sending out photos of herself in that same floral dress with that same soft smile. Woman who enjoys gardening and cooking, looking for a companion in middle age. Simple, innocent, deadly. Robert Franklin was the first to respond, a retired officer from North Carolina who called her honeybee in his letters. They met, and within 3 days, Nannie had moved in with him. To the neighbors, they looked like any other sweet middle-aged couple, walking their dog and attending church events together. But then something strange happened. Robert's family stopped calling. They stopped visiting. And just a few months later, Robert was found dead in his bedroom from sudden heart failure. When the police questioned Nannie, she told them with that same gentle smile that she'd made him warm milk before bed, that they never argued, that he'd simply been feeling tired. Just another natural death, the authorities concluded. After all, elderly men die of heart problems all the time, right? But here's where the story gets truly disturbing. Robert Franklin wasn't the last. Over the next 2 years, 3 more men died after living with Nannie. High blood pressure, stroke, heart failure, all seemingly natural causes. All elderly men who, according to their medical records, had been in decent health just weeks before. In every single report, there was the same chilling detail. Nannie Doss, current companion, was the first to discover the body. A neighbor named Clara Phelps later told reporters, "She was lovely, always offered me pie and tea, but I remember the last time I saw Mr. Sam. He didn't look too well on Saturday night, but nobody expected to hear he was gone the next morning." Nannie just gave that sad smile and said, "He must have been too tired." Must have been too tired to live? What kind of person talks about death like it's just another household chore? It wasn't until one suspicious investigator decided to take a closer look that the truth began to surface. While reviewing death records, he scribbled a note that would change everything. 5 men dead in 4 years, all living with the same woman. Might be coincidence, but worth checking. When they finally examined one of the victims more thoroughly, the toxicology report revealed traces of sodium monofluoroacetate, rat poison, the kind that's hard to detect and even harder to survive. The word poisoning appeared in official investigation files for the first time. The sweet, harmless widow was actually a calculated killer. When police brought Nannie in for questioning, she walked into that interrogation room like she was attending a church social. Same floral dress, same handbag, same soft smile for everyone present. The investigator asked her to walk through the evening of her latest victim's death. "I made dinner, cleared the table, then warmed up some milk. He drank it and went to bed. The next morning, he didn't wake up. No emotion, no panic." Just a story told like she was reading from a recipe card. But here's what's truly terrifying. When they asked if she thought what she did was wrong, Nannie's response wasn't denial or justification. She simply smiled and said, "None of them ever made me happy." Think about that for a moment. Not "I didn't do it." Not "you can't prove anything." Just a matter-of-fact statement about her happiness, as if that somehow explained everything. The investigation revealed that Nannie had been doing this for far longer than anyone imagined. And it wasn't just the men from the personal ads. Family members had been dying around her for decades. Children, grandchildren, her own mother. All natural causes, of course. All with Nannie as the devoted caregiver right up until the end. During her trial, reporters packed the courtroom, trying to spot some sign of the monster beneath that sweet exterior. But Nannie sat there in her usual floral dress, nodding politely as the names of her victims were read aloud. Sometimes she even added helpful details, as if she was assisting with a grocery list rather than a murder trial. One police officer later recalled asking if she was tired during a break in proceedings. She smiled and said, "No, I'm used to this." Used to what, exactly? Used to being questioned about multiple murders? Used to sitting calmly while the world learned about her decades of killing? The casual way she said it still sends shivers down my spine. Criminal psychologists struggled to categorize Nannie. She didn't fit the typical profile of a serial killer. There was no history of violence, no obsession with power, no sexual component to her crimes. She killed quietly, methodically, and apparently without much emotion at all. Was this the result of years of abuse and suppression? Or was she simply born without the ability to feel empathy? Here's what makes Nannie's case so uniquely disturbing. She hid in plain sight for 30 years. She moved through multiple states, married, cared for, and buried person after person without raising serious suspicion. She did it all while playing the role society expected from her: the devoted wife, the caring companion, the grieving widow. And perhaps that's the most frightening part of all. Nannie Doss wasn't a monster lurking in dark alleys. She was the woman next door, the one offering you pie and asking about your grandchildren. She was so perfectly ordinary that nobody thought to question the trail of bodies she left behind. The press called her the Giggling Granny, as if the whole thing was some sort of dark comedy. But there was nothing funny about what Nannie represented. She was the product of a society that taught women to endure silently, to serve without question, to disappear into the background of their own lives. And when that kind of suppression finally breaks, it doesn't always explode outward. Sometimes it turns inward, quiet and deadly, like poison seeping through cracks in a foundation. Nannie was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She was transferred to a women's facility in Oklahoma, where she wrote to the magazine that had published her personal ads, "It's peaceful here. I still enjoy afternoon tea and listening to the radio, just like at home." Even in prison, surrounded by walls and guards, she maintained that same unsettling calm. No remorse, no breakdown, no dramatic confession. Just acceptance, as if multiple murders were simply another phase of life to endure. Nobody knows exactly how many people Nannie killed. Conservative estimates put it at 4, but some investigators believe the number could be as high as 11. By the time the full scope of her crimes became clear, the specific count seemed less important than the bigger, more disturbing question: how many other Nannie Dosses are out there, hiding behind floral dresses and gentle smiles? What makes someone like Nannie Doss? Was she born without empathy, or did decades of abuse and suppression slowly erode her humanity until killing became as routine as making breakfast? Did she plan each murder carefully, or did she simply reach for the rat poison whenever life became inconvenient? The truth is, we may never know. Nannie took her secrets to the grave, leaving behind only that haunting smile and a trail of questions that still disturb criminal psychologists today. One handwritten note in her case file has always stuck with me, written in faded blue ink. When a society teaches a woman that her existence means service, sometimes the cost of that silence is someone else's life. Nannie Doss wasn't the result of some biological flaw or obvious mental illness. She was the product of a generation of women taught to endure, trained to be invisible, and left alone with their pain until that pain transformed into something else entirely. In the world of true crime, we often focus on the dramatic cases, the killers with blazing eyes and shocking confessions, the ones who leave behind blood and chaos. But sometimes the most terrifying criminals are the ones who look exactly like someone you trust with your children, someone you'd invite to Sunday dinner, someone who seems too normal to ever suspect. And maybe that's what we should really fear. Not the obvious monsters, but the quiet ones who perfect the art of being overlooked. The ones who understand that the best place to hide is in plain sight, behind a gentle smile and a reputation for being helpful. So the next time you meet someone who seems almost too good to be true, someone whose life is marked by an unusual number of unfortunate accidents and untimely deaths, ask yourself, are you looking at a victim of circumstance, or are you looking at the next Nannie Doss? Because somewhere out there in small towns and big cities across America, there might be another sweet elderly person in a floral dress, offering homemade pie and warm milk to unsuspecting companions. And by the time anyone thinks to ask questions, it might already be too late. The most chilling part of Nannie Doss's story isn't just what she did, it's how long she got away with it, and how many people looked the other way because she seemed too harmless to question. In a world where we're taught to trust appearances, sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones who understand exactly how to appear trustworthy. After all, who would ever suspect the Giggling Granny